Hello Internet. I wanted to make this video to help some folks out there with a really, I think, a rare problem with gas furnaces that I came across, where the furnace was short cycling, but only on the high heat mode. And this unfortunately happened immediately after we had routine maintenance done on the furnace. So I'm pretty confident that the HVAC tech is the one actually caused this problem. We've since fired that company because this has been the second not great experience with them. But I wanted to share my findings and my process of what I found and how I found it and stuff like that. So I'm not going to make you wait till the end to find out what the problem was. The problem was actually the condensate capture box right here being empty. Now, a lot of times it being full or clogged can be the cause of this problem, but in this particular case it was empty, and this is what caused the short cycling only in high heat mode. So let's kind of rewind and find out why I found this and how I found this. So about a couple weeks ago we had routine maintenance done where they just checked it over, change the filter, make sure everything is good, and it was immediately after that it started doing this short cycling. So what would happen is it would go from low heat to high heat in the morning, and what it should be doing is then going back to low heat mode after high to finish off the cycle and then ultimately stop. But what was happening is it would go to low, it would run in low mode without any problems, and then when it go to high, it would run for about a minute or so, a little inconsistent between a minute, 2 minutes, and then it would immediately stop. And about 10-20 seconds later, it would fire back up, low mode, go to high heat mode, and then all of a sudden it would stop. And eventually that short cycling would also stop because the house would get warm enough where it only needed to run in the low heat mode. So I'm a curious guy, I'm a DIYer, I have some history with automation and PLCs and stuff like that. So I wanted to see if I could sort out what this problem was. And if you do some Google searching and some YouTube searching, the most common cause is a blocked return air vent. Whether it's just dust or forgot to take the labels off the filter or something like that. And what that leads to is a high temperature in the furnace itself that trips the high temperature limit sensor. That's from what I found to be the most common cause, but I was confident that wasn't the particular cause in this case. The filter was brand new. I even tried running the furnace without the filter in it just to kind of confirm things. So I started going down other troubleshooting rabbit holes. The first thing I ended up checking was the high temperature sensor itself, which is kind of hiding behind here. So I threw a multimeter on there. I run the furnace and see if that ever was opening up, because that sensor is in series with a lot of the functions of the furnace. So if that ever trips, that self-resetting sensor, if that ever trips, it's going to cut the gas. It's going to cut the signal to the control board saying that that nothing is going good right now. So I checked that sensor. It was never tripping. I even had a thermocouple in the air system, the airflow itself. It never got up to a temperature high enough that would trip it. So that definitely wasn't the cause. The rollover sensor wasn't the cause. I was watching that. Plus, that's not a self-resetting sensor. I could watch the actual burner going in here. And it never came back to reach that sensor, and that sensor itself was never having any issues. So I started looking through the manual as well. It wasn't that no overtemp sensors, clearly no overtemp problems based on the thermocouple readings I was getting from there. So that's when I started checking the pressure sensors, because you could hear them clicking, during the normal cycling of things. So started watching those sensors, and that's when I found that the low pressure switch right here was cutting out. Strangely enough, the high pressure sensor wasn't having this issue. So I started wondering, well, maybe the switch is starting to go bad or something like that. But when I started reading through the manual, I found out that luckily most furnaces, I assume, have a diagnostic mode where you flip a dip switch on the control board, which is hidden behind here, and it'll flash a series of LEDs in a way that leads you to a certain part of the maintenance manual. Kind of like the old diagnostic systems on cars where you hook up a 12-volt lamp and jump a couple of wires and it starts flashing at you what error codes it was. So the particular error code that it was flashing at me was one that was saying that, yep, this low pressure sensor was in fact cutting out during normal operation, and that's what's leading to the shutdown. And again, this is only during the high heat mode, which is kind of confusing. So going through the manual, it listed a number of things, including blocked intake, a bad inducer motor, not able to reach up to RPMs, and including there's also listing for the exhaust and the intake being plugged. It says if there's high winds, it can cause turbulent air that causes poor airflow inside the inducer. And I was pretty confident it wasn't any of those. We'd never had a problem. I took the air filter out, and I could, it ran fine previously to the maintenance tech touching it. So that's what I kept falling back on. So going back, thinking what he did, what I saw him doing, the one thing that he started talking about a lot of was that he took this condensate trap out, making the claim that they get plugged really, really easily, and you got to clean them out really, really often. And he ended up spending like 15 minutes cleaning this thing out, even though nothing was coming out of it. Not because it was plugged, but because there was nothing in there that was plugging it up. It wasn't catching anything other than condensation. So he wasted a lot of time cleaning that thing out for some reason. Put it back in. I didn't think anything of it because I'm not an HVAC tech, so I just assumed he knew what he was talking about. So he put the thing back in. It was like a day or two later that I started having this issue. And I started thinking, should I call the place back? But I knew they were just going to charge me a couple $100. And ultimately, I'm glad I didn't call them back, because they would have just sent the same guy back out, the same guy that caused this problem, and he probably would have spent an hour scratching his head wondering what was going on. So here's the problem. He emptied the condensate trap, and it can't be empty to operate properly, because it functions as a P-trap, similar to like a sink or a toilet or something like that. And it needs to function as a P-trap because the pressure sensors have plumbing that go to it, and the inducer motor housing and stuff like that has the drain that goes to it, and it can't have easy flowing air going through it. It should only have water going through it. And if that's empty and it allows air to go through it, it allows a pressure change to occur. It means that the delicate balance between all the pressure sensors and stuff like that isn't able to remain steady, and ultimately can cause these pressure sensors to switch off and think that the pressure dropped out and that something bad happened. So when I read those error codes and I remembered what had happened maintenance-wise to this thing, I looked through the manual, and sure enough, there's a mention about how when the furnace is first installed, before you can let it operate, you need to prime the condensate trap here. And there's a filler spout right here for doing that, so that you just pour a bunch of water into there, and eventually it drains through the tubes and into the condensate trap, and then out the actual drain itself. So I ended up pouring about 1.5 cups of vinegar, just as like a cleaning agent as well, into the system. And I would say out of that drain tube, I got about 1/2 cup that actually came out, which means that this thing ended up holding roughly a cup of liquid of that particular vinegar. And as soon as I did that, the furnace ran without an issue. The sensor wasn't dropping out, the furnace wasn't short cycling, and no problems, ran like it did before. So that for me really confirmed that the maintenance tech is who caused this issue to begin with. And again, I've since fired them, because this is actually the second time that we've had some inconsistent and not high quality work from them. But one thing I noticed when I was, Google searching and trying to find out why furnaces were short cycle, this particular issue I didn't find. I'm sure it's out there in a forum somewhere, or a random post or something like that. But you don't typically go past the first or second page of Google results. And I never saw this as a particular problem. In fact, the maintenance manual doesn't even list this as a possible cause for the furnace to be flashing the error codes that it did when it's in diagnostic mode. It said that this could possibly be clogged, and or one of the little air tubes here could be clogged, but it never said that it being empty could be a root cause of this particular problem. But luckily, the maintenance manual did list the fact that, when the furnace is first set up, it needs to be primed with that liquid. So kind of lucky that I found that. But again, I didn't find that particular cause over the internet. Now, I'm sure some of the HVAC techs out there are probably just shaking their head, because I'm sure you guys have seen this a good number of times. So yeah, that's what I found, just through basic troubleshooting processes and process of elimination and going through the manual and stuff like that. So, but it doesn't seem to be a common cause of things. The most common seems to be the return, being clogged in some way that causes a rise in temperature to trip out the high temp sensor. Another thing I should mention that I checked was the flame sensor, the flame proving sensor. So again, the furnace ran fine and low, so obviously it wasn't that sensor. But hopefully this helps somebody out there, because it seems to be kind of an oddball one. Maybe modern furnaces don't have this particular problem. I assume they all still have condensate traps, but maybe they're not. Maybe they're a little bit less susceptible to this particular issue. But again, I hope this helps somebody in the future. And thanks for watching. Bye.